The next presentation will be given by myself, Kevin Holvoet. As I said before, I'm the lead for the Threat Research Center within the CITRIS, the intelligence department of the CCB. Next to this, I also am a SANS instructor for the Cyber Threat Intelligence course, the Forensics 578. Now, today I will give you a little bit of an overview of what we've observed in the last quarter in Q2 of 2025 and trying to add the highlights there. All right. So what is on the agenda? A little bit of a zoom out, just checking what happened here, a little bit of an overview of the last quarter. And then we'll zoom in on two specific parts. The first one is ClickFix, a way of phishing attacks. And the second one is Asyncrat. We'll also focus a little bit on the short-term outlook for 2025 in Q3. Now, if you look at the incidents, and please stay with me here, these are the incidents that are reported to us. So, right, every notification that we receive, we classify it under a certain incident type, and this is what we've observed. Now, if you look at this graph, you can see immediately that there's three main parts in there, a fourth that is just behind it, and then there's a couple of incident types that are smaller. If we zoom in a little bit, we have the top three, which is the ransomware, account compromise, and denial of service. Ransomware, it has been with us since 2019, and it seems to stay with us for some time. Now we have account compromises, which are, of course, a start to a lot of attacks and a lot of fraud also, as Miguel mentioned earlier. And then we have denial of service attacks, which is to just bring down your services, your availability. If we go into the ransomware trend, we see that there is a dominant threat from a couple of actors in Belgium, at least, which is Killsec, Akida, and Ransom House. From those, we receive the most amount of notifications. But if you look worldwide, Quilin is really doing a lot these days. So if you have one big group to follow, because we all know they tend to be a little bit opportunistic and just go wherever they can and get some money, Quilin is becoming really, really big. Now, if you look at the tactics are really evolving towards a more complex, more complicated way of working. They are able these days to exploit zero-day vulnerabilities. They are able to actually find or buy vulnerabilities that are not yet publicly known, which is, of course, very dangerous. And it was something that we've only seen in the past with state-sponsored actors. But since all of these guys, all of these cyber criminal syndicates these days, all these criminal organizations, they get more and more money, they're better and better funded, they also have the money and the means to do that themselves. If you look at it, they also try to hunt for any potential supply chain attacks. Look at what happened with Klopp and end of December last year, what happened beginning of this year, also with a couple of things. I'm just thinking about a Move IT, Clio MFT, Crush FTP. Those are a couple of tools, a couple of systems that were used to make a lot of different victims from ransomware. Then they also seem to target critical infrastructure, manufacturing industry, healthcare industry. These are industries that are definitely on the map of ransomware actors. They know if these go down, they want to be operational as soon as possible. There's more of an urgency to pay faster. There's more of a tendency for ransomware actors to go after those kinds of companies. And then the last one, and this is a service that is entered by Quilin, by the Quilin group, which is the Call a Lawyer service. Apparently, nowadays, ransomware actors during negotiations can actually call in a lawyer or somebody who calls himself a lawyer, to go through the documents, to go through legal documents and other things that were stolen, that were captured and exfiltrated from the victim company, and try to use that as a tool to coerce the victim into paying. Trying to say, hey, if you don't do this, we'll tell your government, or we'll tell your regulator, or we'll do anything of that. It's apparently a new service that the Quilin ransomware group is adding here. And there's also significant shifts in the ecosystem. We've seen a lot of groups going away, coming back suddenly in different formats, different kinds of TTPs and different kinds of techniques that are being used. So a lot of changes are happening here in the landscape. Is this because they are hacking each other, which we've seen a lot these days? Think about the Conti leaks, think about a bunch of other leaks where they basically hack one another and just publish whatever they find about each other. But there's also, of course, the law enforcement operations that took down a lot of infrastructure and captured or arrested a couple of people. Now, for a recommendation on protecting yourselves against ransomware, try to look into the shared common TTPs. TTPs that are used, tactics, techniques that are used by many different actors, right? Phishing is one of them. Using valid credentials is another one. Trying to use your Active Directory to deploy everything. Going after your virtual machine systems. These are things that you need to look into. If you look at the account compromise trends, definitely there is a certain trend, a rise over the years, a rise over the quarters, where we see that a lot of credentials are stolen and abused for many different cyber operations. A lot of these cyber operations are, of course, for fraudulent stuff, right? They try to fraud people, they try to get into mailboxes, use that to either get some money or to change an invoice, send that to their customers, get some money that way, which is what we call CEO fraud, or just invoice fraud. And then you also have the part where they use that access to the mailbox to send another phishing email to gather more credentials and do the whole thing again by using that trust between you and your contracts. So if your mailbox is hacked, it will be used or it can be used to go further to other entities and to steal more credentials, to compromise more accounts. Compromising these accounts does not only lead to fraud, of course. What they also do is they try to get money through selling it. Initial access brokers, they get into these things, get the data, get the compromised accounts, and they just sell them off to ransomware actors or whoever is interested, whoever pays the most money. Some recommendations here. Multi-factor authentication, as Miguel already stated, basic hygiene, people. Just some multi-factor authentication, good password policies, changing it every now and again will already help you. Identity and access management. If you make sure that you see what's happening in your infrastructure, that you see that somebody is suddenly logging in from China and he's not there, things are strange, you should look into it. All right, so continuous monitoring on that behavior is definitely very, very important. Then if we have a look at the DDoS attacks remain a threat to, well, everyone. But as you might know, we've had a big incident in end of March, beginning of April, which was called Up Belgium. There, 133 Belgian organizations, unique Belgian organizations, were affected by this attack. And they targeted sectors all over the place. Of course, a lot of government, a lot of energy, but also telecommunications, hosting providers, and media companies were targeted. This was done by no-name 05716, but also by a bunch of affiliate hacktivist group. Now, what we've observed is that the companies who were ready, who had a good baseline, who had a good firewall, who had anti-DDoS protection basics set up, who worked with an external provider to just have an extra layer of protection against your thing, and who had a playbook for DDoS attacks, they had low to no impact, basically. Their systems kicked in, almost nothing. But the people who didn't think about anything like that, they were down the entire day. So please consider a plan, make a plan, invest in some DDoS protection, do the basics on that. Also, register on Save on Web at Work. If you're a Belgian organization, please register yourself on Save on Web at Work, because on our side, it is so much easier if we observe a DDoS attack, to contact you and give you whatever information we have to help you when we know how to reach you. All right, so please do that. Now we can look at the crinks. We saw a lot of North Korea, so I won't dig into that, but we of course have three others which are a threat: China, Russia, and Iran. China, we know that they exploit a lot of edge devices, a lot of vulnerabilities in network devices. Thinking about Ivanti, SAP NetWeaver, and a bunch of other things that we've observed in the last couple of years. Ivanti and SAP NetWeaver only this quarter, but look at your systems. If you have an edge device, if you have a Citrix system or a Palo Alto firewall or a Fortinet firewall or whatever, check them out, look at them. Check their configuration. Is it still the same as it was a couple of days ago, right? Configuration management is really important here. If you see any changes, even if a vulnerability was not published yet, please check it out because you might be dealing with a Chinese actor that found a 0-day in one of their systems. Then we also have Russia. Look at the report from ANSI, very interesting report from our French partners, public one about APT28 and the GRU behind it. They are very active and they had a campaign focused on defense, IT, logistics, and transportation sectors. And then, of course, we have Iran. We know that every now and again they have some activity, especially against Jewish people or researchers or think tanks or anything like that, that is looking into the conflicts over there in the Middle East, looking into the conflict between Iran and Israel, things like that. If you're working on that, you might be a target. So check that out and look at your threat model for yourself and your organization. Most common attack vectors, we have phishing, stays the number one, right? We keep on social engineering people. Awareness does help, keep on doing awareness, but they keep changing their tactics. And of course, AI and all of that generative stuff doesn't really help us in detecting phishing attacks because the whole thing about typos, it's kind of gone. Compromised accounts, big thing. Vulnerability exploitation, another big thing, as I said, especially from the Chinese. Little zoom in on ClickFix. What is ClickFix? ClickFix is a technique where you send an email, you send a message, you send whatever, you make sure that somebody goes to a certain website, and on that website in the browser, it will basically tell the user that something is wrong with your system, or you need to verify something, like in this example, you need to verify that you're not a robot, or you need to do anything else to clean up or improve your system by itself. What they then do is they ask you to copy paste a certain command, which many people don't realize is a command, and then to put it in your run execution system of your machine. If you do that, you're just executing PowerShell code, which for many people is not something that they look into, is not something that is protected by itself. Sorry, just have a little cough out there. Now, if you do this, this triggers an infection. Now, according to some sources, in H1 2025 compared to the last half of 2024, there is a 500% increase of this kind of technique. So please raise awareness to your employees, to your people, and try to make sure that this does not happen. And if we look at the most common observed malware, we have info stealers, we have remote access Trojans, Asyncrat is one of them, and we have some tools that exploit zero-day vulnerabilities. Looking at Asyncrat, the top malware in Europe, apparently, ahead of Cobalt Strike and some others. What is interesting about this is that it was originally written in C#. Then in 2005, very recently in May 2025, there was a new variant that was created in Rust. So it seems to be much more efficient. It uses a C2 via TLS EAS encryption, but it uses legit platforms like Pastebin, Discord, and others to just go over them and use C2 communication. Also, this has been used by a China Nexus espionage campaign called Mirrorface. And then some recommendations, monitor for some same length HTTPS packets at very fixed intervals. See, it means that Asyncrat is beaconing out. Monitor for unknown TLS certificates, right? For example, with very generic names. If the common name is localhost or something like that, check it out. Try to see what's out there on your network. And look for instances of obfuscated PowerShell from Microsoft Office processes. This will not only help for Asyncrat, but for many other systems. Then here I give you an overview of the vulnerabilities that we've seen, that we've observed, and that we published about. Advisory, sometimes also a speed warning. Remember, we have sent over 22,000 spear warnings, 22,000 letters last year to the Belgian public, to the Belgian organizations, telling them about very severe vulnerabilities. Please, if you receive such a letter, check it out. If you want to know about our advisories, the RSS feed is active again on our website. We only publish about vulnerabilities which we think are a real threat to the organizations, are something that is actively exploited, or will be actively exploited according to previous evidence that we've had. So check them out: Ivanti, SAP NetWeaver, Fortinet products, Netscaler from Citrix, and so on. These are all on the list, and this is only Q2 of 2025. So please patch. Little outlook for Q3, ransomware, it will continue. And of course, there's always that likelihood that during the summer months, it might increase because everybody's on leave. There's less people in the SOC, things are missed, less people to react. So sometimes the actors get a hold of that, they profit of that way, and they try to target you. Credential-based compromises will probably further increase. Hacktivist-driven DDoS attacks will persist. We see that they continue all over Europe. It's just a constant thing. ClickFix, definitely look into it and try to make everybody aware of this issue. And then, of course, exploitation of vulnerabilities. Check it out. Look at potential 0 days or changes in your configuration of your devices. And that ends my presentation. I hope that you enjoyed it. And with this, we will actually also again go to the break if there are no more questions. Let's see. All right, no questions related to my topic. So for now, that leaves it. If you have any question, then just let me know. I will try to answer it in the chat or in the Q&A section. Thank you very much.